Life begets death. Everything that has ever lived will one day die. We cannot run from it. We cannot hide from it. Death is inescapable. It is inevitable. A real downer note to open on, I know. Most forms of entertainment, whether they be movies, video games, or what have you, are escapism. They're meant to provide entertainment that distracts from the realities of life, especially things like entropy. But just like with any other art form, many people use the medium of video games to tackle challenging subject matter. And the most challenging subject matter to tackle is death. Yet, death is often the most common aspect found in video games. From games like Hollow Knight, where death is an expected part of the experience and is little more than an inconvenience, to Call of Duty, where human life only has value in cutscenes. It's actually quite rare to find games that don't feature death in some manner. But even rarer than that are games that are not only largely about death, but are about the process of dying, and handle that subject so tactfully that they can only be considered masterful. That, my friends, is why Spiritfarer may be one of the rarest games I have ever played. Spiritfarer is, as it advertises itself, a cozy game about dying. But instead of being a dour, sobering affair that is bleak and nihilistic, it is one of the brightest and most inviting games I've ever seen. The art direction alone is as infectiously cheerful as possible, with vibrant colors and gorgeous artwork that makes everything a treat to look at. But it's not just the aesthetic that is inviting. Everything here is just so comfy. The gameplay loop, the locations, most of the characters, everything is just so damn lovely. Before I start gushing too much, what is this game about? And why should you go play it if you haven't already? Well, without giving too much away, you play as Stella, a ridiculously cheerful girl, accompanied by her cat Daffodil, who takes over the role of Spiritfarer from Karen. As the new psychopomp on the block, you must travel around a strange oceanic world, collecting stray souls and helping them fulfill their final requests so that they'll be able to cross over when they are ready. So that's exactly what you do. Hop around from island to island doing quests for your menagerie of spirits that are all tied to Stella in some way or another. Along the way, you pick up plenty of passengers who you have to take care of by cooking them food, building and furnishing their homes, and of course, the most important thing, giving them lots of hugs. God, it's just so pure. As you talk to your passengers and complete their requests, you learn more about them, their lives, and even about Stella herself. Spending time with these characters, getting to know them, spending your resources to keep them happy and make them productive members of your crew, it all just feels so good. Every time you add someone to your ship, it feels like you're adding another member to your cute little hodgepodge family. And that makes it so much harder when you have to say goodbye. I really don't want to spoil too much here, but this is a game about dying after all. So naturally, there eventually comes a point where you have to say goodbye to each of the characters you have come to know. That's the beauty of Spiritfarer, as well as the tragedy. While the primary gameplay loop is a fun romp of traveling around gathering resources and doing whatever your passengers ask of you, each quest you complete brings you closer to saying goodbye to a friend. No matter what you do, you can't avoid it. You have to lose people. And that's exactly what a lot of these characters feel like. People. They aren't just one-dimensional characters thrown in to fill space or to spout quippy one-liners. They're people with flaws, regrets, and stories to tell. Stories that carry even more weight when you take into consideration that many of them are based on real people that have lived and died. With the exception of a few, I found each of these characters to be truly captivating, and I found myself getting quite invested in them and their stories. And I believe that if there had been a little more time spent with those that didn't resonate with me, even they would have won me over. Now, while these characters and everything surrounding them is the backbone of this game, they aren't the only thing holding it together. The main thing you do in Spiritfarer is collect resources so you can build and upgrade new buildings on your ship, providing homes for your characters, facilities so you can craft new resources, and agricultural spaces for crops and animals. The vanilla, not anthro kind. So, it's a fairly basic base management sim. And while some people out there might consider this style of game repetitive, I found it so cozy and inviting that it scratched every itch I have when it comes to this genre. If I had any complaints with it, it'd be that I wish it had maybe just a little less backtracking at times, and more things to make. Which is really just me being greedy and wanting more of what's already there. And honestly, that's probably my biggest complaint with the game as a whole. I just want more. While my initial playthrough lasted me around 30 hours, I didn't want it to end. I wanted to keep exploring and making stuff for my friends, and having to end that was the hardest part. But everything has to come to an end eventually. And that's ultimately what this game is trying to get across. Nothing lasts forever, and while what we get is often not perfect, we have to enjoy it for what it is before we inevitably say our farewells. That's probably the best way I could possibly summarize Spiritfarer. It's not perfect. The controls in Collision are not always the most refined, making platforming more finicky than it could be, and some of the characters, especially in the late game, don't feel as developed as they should be. There are even some very important details of some of their stories that are not present in the game, but rather in the digital art book, which I think was a terrible decision. But I still think this game is absolutely fantastic despite its flaws, and I thoroughly enjoyed every minute that I spent with it. This game made me smile. It made me laugh. Hell, I'll even admit it made me cry. It is an astonishingly beautiful game, both in its presentation and in its themes. It's a game that absolutely deserves as much recognition as possible, and would be my personal pick for 2020's Game of the Year easily, if one of my all-time favorite franchises didn't release such a banger the same year. The team at Thunder Lotus Games clearly poured their hearts and souls into Spiritfarer. It is one of the most fantastic gaming experiences I have had in recent memory, and if it wasn't for a few flaws here and there, I might even consider it a perfect game. Granted, it is a game that won't affect everyone in the same ways at the same points, but I do think it's a game that will affect everyone in at least some way. And personally, I consider it a great game that will undoubtedly stick with me for a very, very long time. So, if you haven't played this absolute gem already, I strongly recommend that you do. You never know. You might even consider it life-changing. And I'm giving it a 6 out of 10.